Okay, so hello everybody and welcome. It's time to start off the second season of the Non-duality Talks. And today we're here with Alma. Hello, Alma.
Hi, Andrea.
So nice to meet you. I saw a couple of your talks with Angelo from Simply Always Awake. That's how I found you, and I thought they were amazing.
Hmm.
You have like a really there's a depth and like a clarity to you that I really feel drawn to.
Hmm.
So just to start it off, because I don't know much about you though, so if we can just start off like, how did you get into this area at all? Like non-duality or awakening or all those things.
Yeah, I was so as a kid, I was acutely aware of suffering um, in my experience, and that from childhood actually just drew me to um, examine my own mind and um, dig to the root of what was generating my distress, because I had the insight that it was coming from within, that it almost felt like my mind was a hostile place to inhabit. That was the experience a lot of the time. And as I was growing up and going through adolescence, I kind of embarked on a path of introspection, um, and had a lot of resources in within psychology um, at my disposal, and then eventually found non-duality through YouTube. Then I met Angelo, and he became my teacher. Um, and I gained access to more incisive tools to kind of cut through identity, and to get to the bottom of this question of like, why do we suffer? Why do I suffer? Is there an end to suffering? What is what are the mechanisms that perpetuate it? And to me, it's always been investigative. Like this whole path, it's not been really about seeking experiences or seeking insight. I didn't really care too much about all the spiritual fluff. Um, to me, it was more about what is going to be the most direct and efficient way to relieve my suffering. Um, and and I was curious too about how the mind works. I'm a psychologist now, so in tandem to my awakening path, I was also just studying the mind through my direct experience. Um, and those kind of went hand in hand. And yeah, when I met Angelo, he gave me the tools and pointed me in a very direct way, like beyond identity. He pointed to no self, pointed to this or showed me this possibility to wake up to my true nature. And that ended up being like the antidote to the suffering I felt since childhood. It was a steep path for me because I just kept drilling and drilling and drilling and like didn't really settle like for some level of freedom. With the first awakening, there's a lot of freedom that comes through, but that there was never really the possibility for me with my circumstances and the way my life was unfolding to set up camp at any stage of the path. Like my intention and desire was always to keep pushing forward, to keep breaking the next barrier, to access more and more freedom.
How do you feel about that now?
I feel pretty like I feel like there's a finality that occurred um in the last 6 months or so. I don't feel like I am motivated to resolve any more suffering in my own experience. That feels like it's complete, which is really nice. Um,
Do you
so
feel
yeah,
there still is suffering to some extent, or?
not personally, not personally. I do feel like I'm at the mercy of circumstances in life, so there isn't not suffering. It's like there's freedom in suffering, but it's not mine. It's just like I'm a human being that's part of this collective human consciousness, like energy or movement that's right now transpiring in the world, and like there's massive amounts of suffering within the collective, and I'm not immune to that. So in that sense, I do feel it. I do experience it. I do come into contact with it all the time. But there's no sense of like a me being trapped in it or a me being like a victim to it or needing to um disentangle myself from it because I don't get tangled in it. Like I don't find identity there. Instead, now it's like something is curious about it and moves towards it to then find freedom as it, if that makes sense.
That sounds great. How do you feel like non-duality goes with the psychology? Because it's quite different lenses, or what? I mean, non-duality is not a lens, but it's a different way to look at things, I guess.
Yeah, I think psychology is like one paradigm. It's like one realm of experience. Psychology is the study of the mind, and the mind is consciousness. Um, So I think it's just a field of study that I happen to be have devoted my career to. Like I made out a career out of that, and I took to academia to study it. I don't think it's necessary to know about psychology to wake up, but it can be very useful because it helps to deconstruct the complexes in the mind that through which identity is formed and identity finds like traction there. Identity gets hooked into different complexes of the mind. And a lot of times it's like the mind is a house of mirrors. It's a labyrinth where there's a lot of shadow, plays of shadow, and that's how I identity manages to um, survive by hiding. And I think understanding psychology helps provide insight into what those mechanisms are and how they show up differently in different people, the textures of it, the flavors of it, the variants of it, and so it can be useful. But then ultimately, inquiry is what helps one break free from their psychology. So I would never settle at just a psychological understanding of something because what's more interesting to me is like who's behind that, who believes that. Um, so to me, the most interesting aspect of psychology is how it helps me peel back the layers because the mind also is a very complex, layered, multifaceted organism, so to speak. And um, with inquiry, we could sort of tack off the layers and then we let go of our psychology. Like it's not personal.
So how was that for you? Like the shift, like how would you describe what happened for you?
It's a process. It was gradual. Um, my first shift happened within like 4 or 5 months of hardcore inquiry. um doing exactly this, what I was just talking about, like analyzing my psychology and then asking um inquiry questions, who am I questions, or questions that target the identity, the one that is identifying with their psychology, and then uprooting that. So each time like the question gets asked, more and more clarity comes through. And the clarity is about the fact that there's no one there, until that spell of identification with mind, identification with psychology, like that spell breaks. And that's what happened to me. Like there was that awakening where um, I just went from being identified with my thoughts to having access to all of consciousness all at once and being free from that identification mechanism. Um, what it felt like bliss. It felt like big emotional release, a lot of unwinding of sort of tension in the body and habitual ways of like contorting my nervous system, that just felt like it was let go of. It happened to me very young, so um, it didn't feel like there was a lot that I was carrying as far as like habits and conditioning because I was 19 at the time, so I hadn't had much life experience. But I was suffering a lot right up to that shift, so it did feel like a massive relief to like stop, to no longer have to suffer in those same road to repeated ways. And then after that, like I would say like the real work started. Like that shift was beautiful, it was expansive, it was amazing, but there was so much work to do in the aftermath around
How
shadow.
long ago was that?
That was 8 years ago.
Hmm. And what was the aftermath?
The aftermath was like shadow material, just shadow material. The non-dual inquiry, because that first shift it definitely gave me like quite a taste of non-dual, but the senses were not fully non-dual after that shift. Like things closed down within like 10 days after the shift. It was like
Mhm.
10 days of a lot of expansiveness, and then the shadow material started coming, and it was like everything that the identity mechanisms had been built to contain was now like blowing up in my face, and I couldn't contain it. And that's real. Like it really was like that. It was very intense. Like the intensity was dialed up significantly. But at the same time, I was fully committed on the heart level. Like it was a point of no return. There's no turning back. But I just kind of accepted that, okay, now my life is devoted to this work. Um, and after that, the inquiry had to get more and more refined and uh, specific, precise to working through that shadow material. And then over the last 8 years, it's been the same kind of work. Um, I would say a year and a half after that first shift, was it like a year and a half? No, it was like no, it was a little over a year. It was like a year and 2 months after that one. I had a non-dual shift, like a no self shift. And so what happened then is that I had access to the senses in their direct state, um, and the sense of self dropped away. And I worked really hard for that too. Like I just did a lot of continued inquiry and shadow work to be able to break through to that, where it was like there was no more identity with mind at all. Like because after that first shift, there still could be like identity with the mind itself, even if it's the expansive mind, um, unbound consciousness, there's still like the tendency to find oneself as that big expansive consciousness. And then with the no self shift, even that goes away. And it's like there's no identity with anything. There's no uh there's no prioritizing of the mind. Like there's no making the mind the fact that we have human consciousness special. There's no like choosing of that, grasping of that, um, bias towards that. It's just like awareness. I hesitate to use that word, but it's more of like the experience of life is presence and right here-ness without uh leaning too much into um mind or what's going on in the mind. So it's beyond mind. I don't know. I hope that's not too confusing to the way I'm.
No, no, I love how you're very eloquent how you express it. But do you still have shadow stuff coming up now or not anymore?
Mm, The shadow work continued after that. So the past 8 years have been a lot of shadow work. Um, I think too, it's like it's a product of life circumstances. Yeah, it's very much about waking up in the conventional. So by living one's life, the shadow material just naturally comes up. And I took to that. Like I really dove into my life and tried to live as authentically as possible, just followed my heart's desires, and I still do to this day. Um, but like all the triggers that I needed to be able to do the shadow work presented themselves in my very conventional, very mundane day to day. I would say right now I don't feel like there is. I mean, I'm open to there being more shadow work to do. It just doesn't feel like I'm on a personal path of waking up anymore. It feels more like I'm surrendered to life to do whatever the hell it wants to do with me, like to serve. I feel very called to just be available, but I have no defined um, idea or notion of what that needs to look like. So there's a lot of flexibility around that. It doesn't feel like I have a personal preference of where I want what I want this life to look like. Um, and it doesn't feel like I'm avoiding anything. So w one of the telltale signs that for me that there was still shadow work to do is that I was afraid of certain aspects of my own conditioning or my own proclivities, my own tendencies. I was afraid. I knew that there were certain triggers in my life that I would encounter now and again that really activated me and sent me into unconsciousness. Um, and I couldn't quite get under them. Like there was still a bit of like ambivalence or hesitation um around like the next time I would encounter that trigger, even though I knew I would, but there was something like, oh, like I need to avoid that, or I don't really want to go there, or it's like there was like a sore spot. Now I don't feel that way. Like it feels like there's nowhere I'm not willing to go. Um, and even if I do get triggered, I feel like there's this willingness to dive into the trigger with eyes wide open. Therefore, it doesn't feel much like a trigger anymore. Doesn't mean that I won't encounter situations that might be uncomfortable or require me to like question things, or grow in some way, evolve in some way. I think there's still a lot of room for evolution, for refinements of my understanding of myself and of energy in life, and I don't know, like alignment with truth. I think there's always refinements to be made, but it doesn't, right now, I don't feel like there's stuff that I'm carrying in the shadow that's like waiting to be expressed. And I'm kind of like negotiating with that and kind of afraid of it, but like it's still kind of there and I'm lugging it with me. I don't have that experience right now. I feel very much free of that at this moment. So that's as much as I can report. But who knows? Maybe there's some massive shadow thing that is right around the corner and it's waiting to get me. I'm open to that possibility, but yeah, right now life feels pretty free.
Hmm. Would you say that there's no, like, you don't sort things into good and bad? What happens to you? Or is there equanimity or something like that?
There is a lot of equanimity. There's a lot of equanimity. I mean, there's definitely like pleasant and unpleasant, but there's no one picking and choosing that. So it's just like, yeah, that doesn't feel so good. That feels better, but nothing leaves a mark. Nothing leaves a stain. So things that don't feel good or things that do feel good, they come and they go.
Yeah,
They
they
can,
do. Maybe that's a good note to end on. They come and they go. All things come and they go. Is there anything you wanna say? Are you working with Simply Always Awake now, or you did some videos?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't have your own, like your own channel or something like that.
I have my own YouTube channel. I just started it.
Ah, okay. Then I'm gonna put the
Yeah.
link in the description as well,
Okay, cool.
so people can find you. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for connecting. It was lovely to talk to you.
You too.
Take
Thanks for
care.
reaching out.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.